Hey guys, today we're going to talk about random sampling. We're also going to talk about populations and samples and whether or not something is biased. So the first part that we need to talk about is we need to establish what a population is. So when information is being gathered about a group, the entire group of objects, individuals, or events is called the population. Okay, so then a sample is part of the population chosen to represent the entire group. Okay, so think of like a survey when you're wanting to figure out what an entire population like Colerain Middle School thinks about a certain topic. You're not going to survey the whole school. You will survey a sample of that school. So a sample in which every person, object, or event has an equal chance at being selected is called a random sample. A random sample is more likely to be representative of the entire population than other sampling methods.
Will you come to the main office?
So we want our samples to be random because we don't want them to be biased, and we will talk about that in just a second. So you guys did an inquiry lab that involved tomato plants. So the first question that we need to think about when looking at that lab is, what was the population? Was it the farmer or the tomato plants? And it was definitely the tomato plants. Okay, so next we're looking at the sample. Okay, so was it the 10 tomato plants or the 100 tomato plants? The 10 tomato plants was the sample because it was representative of the entire population. Okay, so the next part, why was the method of dropping small objects onto the poster considered random sampling? And that takes us back to up at the top, so where it says everybody has an equal chance. So on that poster, every single plant had an equal chance of being selected. So that's what we're going to write down. So equal chance at being selected. Okay. The next part, the method of choosing just the first 10 plants is considered biased sampling. A biased sample is one in which one or more parts of the population are favored. Why do you think choosing only the first row could be considered a biased sample? And that is because not every plant has an equal opportunity to be selected. So the first 10 are favored over the rest. Okay, so in order for it to be random, once again, you have to have the equal opportunity for each plant or whatever it is to be surveyed or selected. Okay, so the next part we are going to look at is just some scenarios, and we're going to determine whether or not it would be considered biased. So the first one, a random sample of students at a middle school shows that 10 students prefer listening to rock, 15 students prefer listening to hip-hop, and 25 students no music while they exercise. It is concluded that half the students prefer no music while exercising. So this one is not biased because it was a random sample. Okay, so it's not going to be biased as long as we're getting that random sample. All right, next one. Every 10th person who walks into a department store is surveyed to determine his or her music preference. Out of 150 customers, 70 stated that they prefer rock music. The manager concludes that about half of the customers prefer rock music. Okay, now this one is also not biased. And once again, that is because it's a random sample. And that is key when we see every 10th person, okay, who walks in. So everybody is equally as likely to be that 10th person. It just depends on when you walked in. It's kind of like dropping the markers onto the poster. All right, part C. The customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. The results show that 85% of people like to listen to music in their leisure time. So this one would be considered biased, okay? And that is because they're only asking people in a music store. So their answers are going to favor music more so than any other leisure time activity. So the reason only ask customers at a music store. All right, so let's flip the page. Okay, so here are some examples of biased and unbiased samples. And so remember, unbiased samples, that's what we want. We want that random sample. We don't want any bias to influence our data. So the first method that we're going to talk about, each item or person in the population is as likely to be chosen as any other. So we're going to call that a simple random. Okay, so an example of that is when you put names in a hat or names in a bowl and select people out of that. So my example is going to be names in a bowl. And then every name in that bowl is equally as likely to be selected to participate in whatever it is. The next part, so items or people are selected according to a time or interval. And we're going to say that that is systematic random. So that was like that last problem that we just talked about. Every 10th person entering a certain place will be surveyed. Other examples would include choosing names from a list. Like if you're choosing from a list the 20th person each time, so I'll say every 20th person, that makes more sense. So every 20th person, or like I said, every 10th person that enters a place, those would be examples of systematic random. Okay, people are still going to be selected at random, but there's a method to it. Okay, so biased samples, we're going to talk about a convenient sample. So a convenient sample is just using people that are easily accessed. So an example of that would be to represent all students the principal surveys a math class. Okay, so they're surveying all of the people in one area just because it's convenient, and that would produce biased results. The next part, a voluntary response, making a sample out of those people who choose to participate. So an example at school with that would be students who wish to express their opinion, go to the office after school. Who wish to express opinion, go to office after school. Another example of a voluntary response is when you go to the grocery store and they print off a receipt and it says, you've been, go online and fill out our survey and give us all 5s and we'll give you, I don't know, like a $5 off coupon for your next visit or something like that. So those are voluntary responses. You don't have to do it, but usually the people that choose to participate are going to have stronger opinions than the ones who obviously didn't choose to participate. All right, so now let's look. So when we are looking over scenarios, we need to make sure that we're thinking about who was surveyed, what they were asked, what kind of sampling method was used, does the sampling produce unbiased results, and is the conclusion valid? So we are going to look through these scenarios down at the bottom. There are 5 of them. The first one, Zach is trying to decide which of 3 golf courses in the area is best, so he randomly surveyed people at a sports store. So we will say that this is biased, and it's convenience. Okay, so it's biased because of the convenience. And so, I mean, he's only surveying people at a sports store, so your results are going to be more skewed one direction because of how you asked people in the sample that you chose. So we would say that the results would be not valid. All right, number 2, to find out how much money the average American family spends to cool their home, 100 Alaskan families are surveyed at random. Okay, that is also biased, and it's also a convenience bias because they're only surveying people in Alaska who are cooling their home. Alaskan families are going to spend a whole lot less to cool their home. They'll spend more to heat it, but less to cool it. So that's not going to give you accurate results. So we will say that that is not valid. Okay, number 3, to determine whether students at Southern Middle School will attend an art festival, Ms. Cornett surveys the students in the art club. Once again, this is biased. And this one would be a convenience bias again. I hope I'm spelling convenience right. Yep, I am. Okay, yeah, so it would be convenience bias, and once again, not valid. Obviously, art club students are going to be more likely to attend an art festival, so that will skew your results. Number 4, to evaluate the quality of their product, a manufacturer of cell phones checks every 50th phone off the assembly line. Okay, we would say that this is unbiased, and it's unbiased because it's systematic. Every 50th phone shows that there's a method, but the phones are being selected at random. And so we would say that the results would be valid. All right, last one. Okay, a magazine asks its readers to complete and return a questionnaire about popular television actors. So we would say that this is biased. And this one's going to be biased because it's voluntary. So remember that only people that are super opinionated are probably going to respond. So that will skew your results. And we would say that this one would be not valid. Okay? All right. If you have any questions whatsoever, please make sure you make note of it on your WISC. And then we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.